My name is John Stenhouse, as I said before, and this is Angels at Essex, University of Essex Enterprise Zone. This webinar is being sponsored by Essex County Council and forms part of the business support programme that they offer to businesses in Essex. However, it is available elsewhere in the country, so if you don't ask, you don't get, so please ask. This is part of an investment readiness programme which is run by the University of Essex for all businesses, regardless of sector and regardless of their current state. And today we have the distinct pleasure of our guest speakers from the Let's Do Business group, which is part of Backing Essex Business Getting Investment Ready programme, which is actually funded through the Essex County Council. Now, the presentation today does cover businesses in Essex, but please remember that there are other services available elsewhere around the country, and we will be pleased to point you in the direction of where they are available. And of course, some of what you hear today will actually be available elsewhere around the country, and I will let the presenters tell you all about that as they go along. I have with me today David Walford and Graham Johnson, and I will now let David introduce himself and start his presentation. David, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your kind words. Yes, my name's David Walford. I'm a business advisor from the Let's Do Business group and Backing Essex Business. We're here today alongside my colleague Graham to talk about getting you investment ready with your business, and we've devised various slides to assist you with that. And I think as we go along, no doubt questions will come into your mind. Please submit your questions and we'll have a question and answer session at the end. So without much haste, I shall go forward. So really our agenda for today firstly looks at the key aspects of a business plan. Then we go on to the management within a business. Then we go on to the legal implications and legal thoughts, then on to finance, and the last bit, perhaps making it a bit topical, the X factor. So first things first is the business plan. Now for us, a business plan is all about your business and what you want to do over the next year, 5 years, 10 years and beyond. So you need to plan for that. And a business plan should include your business and objectives, your skills and experience, your target customers, your market and competition, your marketing and sales plans, your operational plans, financial projections, and any supporting evidence. Then at the end, you have an executive summary, which really goes back over the plan to give the investor an idea of your business. Now, we within Let's Do Business Group are here to help businesses such as yourselves to put that plan together. You've got the ideas, you'd like to set up your business, or you may even be an active business, and you're going through the plan for 2022 and beyond. Well, we can help you with that and make sure that everything in the plan is covered. And then another part of that going forward is about reviewing the plan. So we also look at businesses, and we have an anagram which we use called Campari and ICE. Now each letter within Campari and ICE is represented by the items in this circle. So it's character, ability, means, purpose, amount, repayment, and insurance. That might seem new to you, or may not indeed, but what we'll do now is go to each section and let you know what should be in that bit. So the first two is character and ability. So it's looking at the management structure, the CVs and experience of the team within your business, because you're going to work as a team to push the business forward. And all those individuals, whether they be the business owner, right down to people working in the business, are going to bring something to the team. You'll have an organisation structure. So that's where individuals sit in their business, what their responsibilities are, and who is within the business. That structure chart can change. It can be written out today and could change tomorrow, or it may stay in place for some time until you take on new staff, or indeed perhaps staff move on to different roles. So within that organisation chart, you've got the employees, their roles, their responsibilities, and job descriptions. And the last thing on this particular section is about performance management, development processes, and policies. Because as you go through your businesses or your business, I can assure you these will change. And as they change, they need to be developed further. So a few words you probably heard, they're fit for purpose. So the next section is all about marketing, sales, products, services, and the market. So who knows about your business? You've got an idea to set up your business today. It's a good idea, but nobody outside of your business may know about it. What are you going to sell? What products or services are you looking to offer? So products, services, pricing. So pricing, a very important part, because you need to make sure that your products and services are priced accordingly, so they're competitive, and also you're going to make a profit, because most people within business are looking to make a profit. Then you look at your competition. Why do customers buy from you as opposed to, or why will they buy from you as opposed to buying from the people they buy from currently? Your marketing plan. What actions are in your marketing plan to let your business and your business idea get out into the market? And the outline of the sales model, who are you going to sell to? Who's going to sell in your business to your customers? And then lastly, how are you going to do that? So it's quite a complicated, detailed project you're putting together. And then the last thing is you've achieved sales, and most businesses start off with new sales coming in, and then it's following up on those sales and tracking them. Can you go back to that customer who has made an order? Would they like a repeat order? Are they looking for different products? So it's working through orders you've received that perhaps haven't been fulfilled. And again, you need to go back to those customers to say, you put an order through, what's happened to it? So means and purpose. So the means and purpose of your business is underlying the business strength and assets within the business. So what is in there? What value is in the business, and what intellectual property is there within the business? So the intellectual property might be you've got an idea, which is your property, and that is a value that other people may want to purchase or may even want to share with you. Tangible net worth, Graham will come on to that later when we look at the financial section. The next bit is about your personal means. So what assets and liabilities do you have as individuals that you may be putting into the business? What commitments do you have as individuals that you need to service? You might have loans, you might have a mortgage, which the business needs to generate income to service. So it's looking outside the business at the individuals running the business or owning the business and what asset liabilities, income and expenditure is in place. And then within that part, what is the funding for? So you might need investment. What are you looking for that investment for? Is it to buy assets for the business, or is it to fund income which is not received even though you've had expense up front? And is it legal, moral, and in line with the funder's principles? So your investors that are looking to invest in your business, why are they coming to you? Do you have a legal business? Of course you do, but you've got to just justify that to the proposed funder to then secure the investment into your business. So once you have that funding in place, or ahead of that funding in place, you need to look at how you're going to repay that funding. And do you need to have insurance for the borrowing that you may take? So you're borrowing money, or an investor is putting money into your business. They may want repayment of that figure. How long is that repayment period? Again, looking at your business plan, and Graham will come onto the financial plan again, but what term of the loan is being requested? And then you're aligning the funding to the life cycle. So if you bought, as an example, a car for your business, you've got a van that you're going to use to distribute. How long does that van last for? If it's for 5 years, and then you're asking for borrowing for 10 years, that wouldn't work. So you need to align your funding with the lifetime of the asset. Can the business service the funding? Again, that's looking at finance. Graham will come on to that later. But if you can't justify the business being able to service the funding, you may not get the investment or the borrowing that you're requesting. Now, you're setting up your new business, you're an existing business. So what collateral is in that business to potentially support the borrowing that you're going to have? So the borrowing may come from an investor, and the investor may not need any collateral, but he might need to take an equity share in your business. Alternatively, if you've gone for traditional finance from a bank or a finance company, they may want a charge or a mortgage over your business, or even they may want a charge over your home or assets outside the business to provide support behind what you need. The legal considerations. So when you set up your business, you have to make sure it's legal. So the constitution, the intellectual property, terms and conditions, warranties and returns policy, employees' job descriptions and policy. Now, a lot of that is probably difficult, maybe difficult to understand. Our suggestion would be speak to someone, speak to a solicitor. So when you're setting these things up, you've taken legal advice to make sure before you start your business, everything is in place from a legal perspective. And lastly, it's not all about money, but it's certainly important. And I'll pass you on to Graham, my colleague, who can lead you through the next slides.
Thank you, David. So Graham Johnson, I'm one of the business advisors at Let's Do Business Group. And David's absolutely right. So 2 elements of the assessment that any external stakeholder takes when they look at a business would be the non-financial information, which David's broadly covered in terms of the business plan and the scope for the business. But alongside that is equally important the financial basis under which the business is operating. And there are 3 key documents that form the part of the historical financials, the current management information, and the projections going forward for any business. and they're the cash flow forecast. Cash flow forecast will reflect the incoming cash for the business in a period, typically on a monthly basis, and the outgoing expenses of the business for that same period. The bottom line between the two then will either be a positive or a negative position, and it's that position that either needs to be addressed by way of additional funding or is providing finance for the future of the business, or that in finance that can be used in another way to support the business. The second document is the profit and loss forecast, which is broadly similar in terms of its profile over the period that it covers, but it's showing that it's reflecting whether or not, as a business, the business is trading on a profitable basis based on the invoices that are raised in the month against the cost of the product sold in relation to those invoices. The difference between the two fundamentally is going to be timing, in that whilst invoices may be raised in 1 month, it may be a month, 2 months before those invoices are settled by your customers. If that's the case, that will create a cash flow impact in relation to your revenue position that needs to be financed. And equally, there are items within the profit and loss forecast that are not cash items that will not impact on your cash position, such as depreciation or amortization. But the combination of those two documents, along with the underlying assets of the business, are pulled together to produce the balance sheet of the business, which is a statement at a specific point in time that shows the underlying value of the business, the net worth of the business, broken down by the constituent elements of the assets, whether they're fixed assets or whether they're your rotating and revolving current assets, and also your liabilities within the business. We touched there on the financing aspects of it and what we may need to look at. And the focus of this is really going to be the finance options. But when we look at the finance options, there's one, I think, an old adage which is relevant here, actually, and it remains true to every business, which is focusing on the financial performance. Your turnover within the business is important. It's important to see it growing, but it is an element of vanity in it, because the basis on which the turnover is arrived at may not necessarily generate a profit for the business, depending on how your business is operating. So ultimately, we want to be generating sales, making a profit on it, and that's the sanity aspect of it. But the overriding issue is that we've got to generate cash. Businesses fundamentally get into difficulty for one reason, which is they run out of cash. There are lots of symptoms behind that, but it's the availability of cash. So the old adage is that cash flow is king. Cash flow either generated within the business or that is available from external funders, which is why it's important then to look at how best to finance your business operations. Two key areas of focus here, looking at your working capital and capital expenditure finance, which is largely going to be short to medium term finance. And then on top of that, the equity finance opportunity, which will be a medium to longer term finance opportunity, finance proposition. So if we look at the spread there of finance options, most, if not, I would guess all businesses start with an element of investment by the principals behind the business, by the founders, and its own cash. And the majority of businesses will start on that basis, and what's affectionately referred to as friends, family and fools money, in terms of soft loans that are there to support a business idea and help somebody get their business going. Unfortunately, that's usually a limited pot, so it will only get the business so far. On top of that, though, there is support available in the form of government support, both in the form of direct financial support, and also in lieu of finance, but support that's available, such as the support that we provide through Let's Do Business Group in terms of business support. And we're funded to provide up to 12 hours of support to help business owners to grow their business. Alongside that, though, is financial support in the form of UK grants, slightly skewed pitch over the last probably 2 or so years now, with the focus on the COVID-related support grants that have been available. But as we emerge from the various lockdowns, we'll see more mainstream grants hopefully come back on stream. But one of the areas that has continued to be supported has been the government Innovate UK grants, which is available to businesses to help them develop innovative ideas. We also still have access to some of the European Union grants, so there is grant support available. Touch a little bit more on grants in shortly. But again, that only gets us so far, and invariably grants will never provide all of the finance that's needed to help a business to be able to trade. So we then start to look at the traditional bank funding routes, whether it's short-term working capital overdraft facilities or loan facilities that are available to businesses to help them meet the day-to-day cash needs of the operation, or alternatives in the form of either asset finance, which David alluded to, in terms of vehicle finance there, and the importance of linking the right finance into the expenditure you've got. So asset finance, the old adage used to be if there were 4 wheels and engine, it could be financed by an asset financer, the likes of the Lombards, Black Horse and Bibby, for example, in the marketplace. But the reality is that asset finance can be used to finance plant, machinery, equipment, fixtures, fittings, a variety of different asset purchases. Or invoice finance, where with invoice finance, or factoring, as you may have heard the term, we're looking at expediting the receipt of the proceeds from your invoices that you raise. So invoices raised on day one, it's financed to 95% of the amount that's required, the amount of the invoice, with the invoice then being settled by your customer within your terms of trade. But you've received the money up front, it's helped to finance the working capital requirement of the business. Or finally, asset-based lending, which is more of a hybrid product where we're looking at stock and inventory finance alongside invoice finance, alongside plant and machinery and possibly property finance. So more of a hybrid facility across all of the asset classes. There is government support available in terms of startup loans, and the startup loan company supports businesses who have been trading up to 24 months. Going to cover that in a little bit more detail shortly, but that finance is available along with growth loans that again has an element of government support. Once we're getting outside of the more mainstream markets and high street market, should I say, of funding, we're looking at newer comers in the markets, and over the last 15 years, we've seen a growth in the peer-to-peer lending market. What would you describe as a second-tier market? Second, because they don't have that high street profile, but a second-tier market, the likes of Funding Circle or iWalker, maybe names that you've come across. That market's grown where the relationship is largely down to a borrower to lender relationship purely based on the loan, rather than more of a widestream relationship based arrangement. Equally important, if you have credit card sales, is merchant cash advances, which is another newer development in the finance marketplace, where businesses are able to leverage against anticipated future sales with the repayment coming from credit card sales going forward. Key there, obviously, with merchant advances is we are looking for credit card transactions rather than more mainstream invoicing. So quite a scope within the working capital expenditure markets in terms of what finance is available. And that covers us really for that short to medium term finance. If we're looking at the medium term into the longer term finance and more in line with investment and growth plans, then we're looking into the equity finance world. 3 key elements of that to consider. The crowdfunding market, again, a relatively newer player in the UK market, but there have been some large success stories within the crowdfunding market. One of the main ones being Brewdog, who went through 4 or 5 rounds of crowdfunding. And with crowdfunding, it's identifying individual investors, such as us on this call here today, to put in a small amount of money, and the crowd element of it generates enough funds to provide the required funds for the business to grow. Crowdfunding is a good market opportunity, particularly where there is an innovative product or innovative development in there that is attractive to consumers. Second line of attack there would be the business angel market, very much in line with the work that University of Essex are doing with their Angels in Essex programme. The difference between the business angel and the crowdfunding side predominantly is going to be that you're dealing with a smaller number of investors. We're into the Dragon's Den type territory, where investors are hopefully have an affinity for the business and bring more to the party than just cash. We want an angel on board who can help grow the business, open doors that as a management team you wouldn't necessarily be able to do. If we then take it to the next stage and we're looking at a larger investment and we're looking at more of a growth plan for the business, we're looking into that venture capital, not on the slide here, but private equity, which tends to be much larger investment coming into to businesses to help them grow. And we're looking there at commercial investment, largely corporate stakes in businesses, and so fundamentally to help them grow. Alongside that, though, and particularly relevant for early stage businesses, the need to pay the bills. So whilst I talked about own cash for individuals behind the business, there's often a need to continue supporting businesses when you want the business to grow by not taking a salary. To do that, then you've got to go earn money elsewhere to pay the bills. So indirectly, for a lot of early stage businesses, there is a need to take on those delivery jobs, take on the Amazon delivery driver jobs outside of your working hours to at least continue to be able to pay the bills. Importantly, within all of the finances, that the business should partially be self-financing. So ultimately, we are looking at generating real sales within the business and making the sales work to help fund the cash flow of the business. So I'm going to go in a little bit more detail about the three elements of that external funding in particular. Very briefly, and we'll share these slides anyway, so anyone can have a look at this in a lot more detail. But with the grants will ideally help a business business owners take forward their business idea. They're unlikely ever to be the total and full solution to what's required. Importantly, though, with grants, they are invariably not repayable unless there is something untoward within the grant scheme. They shouldn't be repayable, so it is a grant to the business. Importantly, though, it must fit what you're looking to do and what the grant body is looking to provide. Can be quite a drawn-out process, but always worth considering. And there are a number of grant schemes, both for smaller capital expenditure and specialist capital expenditure, that are available across the market. Southeast Business Boost provides a small amount of funding to help with capital expenditure, and grant bodies like Locase will provide support to help businesses that have carbon efficient expenditure, so the low carbon across Southeast expenditure. We're looking at bank debt, though. The difference there between our debt and our grant side is that we do start to get into cost. We are looking at paying interest. We are looking at paying fees for debt. Invariably, there will be a security requirement, and equally, it will be available for a term. So there needs to be an ability to repay that. And we're looking at that cash flow forecast in particular, proving that the business can generate sufficient funds to be able to service its debts and its obligations. We look at the equity side, though. Different end of the market, we're looking at somebody putting some hard cash into the business. What it invariably comes with is a shareholding requirement, so an equity stake in the business. And with an equity provider coming on board, it does mean as your profile of your board and your profile of your business has changed slightly, in that you've got another paymaster to direct paymasters to account to. Hopefully they bring something to the party as well, and that really, the choice of equity partner, the choice of angel investor is important to get right, to make sure you benefit from their involvement with the business. So the factors that affect external stakeholders are broadly the same depending on whoever the external stakeholders are, and there are a huge number of external stakeholders that a business has, be it from funders, from banks or other lenders to the business, from investors, from the business's suppliers, from your customers, and as a direct result of that, from your trade creditors and your non-trade creditors. So a large number of stakeholders who are all looking at what is available both in terms of your non-financial information and equally your financial information to enable them to make a decision as to whether or not to be able to support you through the relationship that you have with them. So there's a number of things to think about in terms of how you present that and how you address the concerns that those stakeholders may have. And just a couple of tools to look at in terms of this actually is from the first start is saying, well, what is the X factor of my business? What makes my business? Why have I set up my business? And what's make my business special? And why are people going to come to work with me, be it through a finance relationship or through a supplier or a customer relationship? And the key to that is looking at how we want to be successful. We want to generate sales. We want to generate sales profitably, and we want to generate cash at the end of it. So how, as a business, are you doing that? How are you demonstrating to the market that you've got a product worth buying? Is there an element of differentiation in what you do? And is that differentiation due to a price? Are you able to deliver the same product as others but at a lower price because you're more efficient in the way you produce? Or is it a service-driven proposition that enables you to differentiate yourself from your competition by just being better at what you do? or is it something else? And that's the key when we link the two aspects of the financial element back into your non-financial element, to demonstrate that there is a clear line between your business and the customer and the requirements of the customer. A couple of things to think about, and I'm sure this won't be a surprise or a new slide to many people actually, but SWOT analysis is a useful tool to look at both following through the non-financial aspects of your business, but also feeding this into your financial forecasting particularly. And with a SWOT analysis, it's a bit of a pros and cons analysis in a way actually. So we're looking here at the internal factors, so those factors that you can control as a business, and we're looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the business. So that's what you don't got direct control over, again, versus the external factors of the business, so the opportunities and the threats available to the business. And how we can move, hopefully, from the harmful external factors into the helpful internal factors and exploit that to your advantage. In an ideal world, if we've got a clear analysis of each of them, we can look at how we can take the strengths of the business to tackle the threats of the business and develop the opportunities. It's worth doing your own SWOT analysis. It's worth getting your team to do the SWOT analysis of the business, and also where you can get external parties to also look at your business in a similar way, to see if there's commonality. One of the challenges is always the threats box, but every business has threats, so it's important and they're the areas where we need to be most alive to challenging and competition. So SWOT analysis helps. There's lots of management tools that you can use to assess your business. But another one that's worth considering for businesses that are certainly businesses that are in an earlier stage in the market or well established that may need to just protect their position is Michael Porter's analysis, which is the Porter's 5 Forces analysis. And we're looking here at you as a business and what competition you have. So you're in the middle of the chart here as a business. So what's your competition? Where's the rivalry for your customers? How do you differentiate yourself from your customers? How do you tackle the marketplace generally? That's in itself a primary challenge. But on top of that, we've also got a horizontal challenge in that we need to understand who is the most powerful in the relationship. Is it your customer? Is it you as the supplier? Who has the power in the relationship? And in understanding the link between the buyer and the supplier power, we can understand what needs to be done within the business to make sure you fully exploit the opportunity that you have as a business. You've also got a vertical impact, though, in that if you're in a market that is doing well, there's always a threat that others will see it and will look to come in and bring new products into the market, develop new products within the market, so new entrants into the market. Alongside that, there's also a challenge that there's substitute products out there that your customers could look to take on other products that do broadly what your product does or service does, but without extra costs. So quite a lot of challenge within the business, and it's understanding the link between those 4 external factors on you as a business to see how best to develop your business proposition. So there's quite a lot within that to consider, and there are other management tools. It's just a helpful guide to have a couple to start with to see, okay, what do I need to do as a business? If we look at the finance side, though, I touched on earlier the loan finance that's available, and we as a business support agency, we provide loan finance from our own funds, and we do provide finance under the recovery loan scheme. The recovery loan scheme replaced the CBILS and the bounce back loan that was available in the early phase of the COVID restrictions, so it came into force at the middle of last year and runs through to June of this year. And under the recovery loan scheme, we will lend between 25,000 and 150,000 to businesses, in this instance across the southeast. So we're not limited just to Essex. We will lend outside of Essex to businesses up to 6-year term. And because of the nature of the scheme and the amounts that we're able to we provide, there's no additional security available and required rather, and there are no fees under this scheme for the direct fees for the scheme itself. Under the loan, though, we have interest around about from around about 9%, and the maximum charge under the recovery loan scheme is 14.99%. That's set for any lender. Under the recovery loan scheme, the government guarantee us as a lender up to 70% of the amount of the debt, and that scheme runs through to June this year. Alongside that, we provide growth loans in the form of our business loan proposition, where we provide up to between £20,000 and £100,000. And we're looking at 1 to 7 year term typically on that. And we would look at personal guarantees and additional security of that for the business loans. We lend where other banks and other lenders aren't able to lend, which would normally be an issue over the available security, the underlying viability of the business, and all the assessments that David outlined in the first half of the presentation remain the same, whether we're looking at the business loan, the recovery loan, or any finance being provided. I mentioned the startup loan scheme as well, and the startup loan scheme is available to businesses that have been trading for less than 24 months and is available for funds up to 25,000 for 4 maximum loans per business, up to, so four directors, maximum 4 loans, up to 5 year term, reasonably conservative rate of interest, given that it's a technically unsecured loan, no fees, and it's 6% fixed interest rate. The startup loans are a personal loan and the funds are invested into the business, but it's a helpful and a government-backed support to early stage investment into businesses. If anyone does have any questions for David or I, very happy to see if we can answer those questions for you now, or as I say, alternatively, we're happy to follow up at a later date.
It's when assessing an application, I assume that means any application, whether it's loan or other help and support. Are character and ability more important than the means?
All those elements are important and they work alongside each other. Primarily, we're looking at the character and ability of the individual or the business to service the borrowing requirements from their business income that's being generated in the business. The means is if you like, a nice to know in the background, because it shows that the individual or the business may have assets outside of the business that could be used in support of the loan should we need it. But I think initially it's the character, so the individuals managing, owning the business, and their ability to generate income sufficient to service the debt or the borrowing that they're requesting.
It's the key part of the assessment for any investor. At the end of the day, you've got to be able to work with the people that you're dealing with, and you've got to be confident that they can deliver on what is set out as the plan. So it's very much an important part of the assessment.
There's an actual technical question about startup loans, which I know you can answer. This individual, they've had serious issues with the definition of trading for up to 24 months, date of company registration and date from actual trading, i.e. income from sales.
Right.
Basically, their query is their company was registered in 2015, but has not had any sales to date as they have not launched their invention yet.
Right.
Would they be eligible for startup loans? Which is a question. Okay.
So, sure.
And there is a caveat to it as well.
Okay. Straight answer is that it's the date of registration, a date of the company incorporation that the startup loan company will leverage from. There is always a grey area. It's a question of understanding the detail of it. It is very difficult to get an application through the startup loan company process where we've had that passage of time more than 24 months. So it is extremely difficult, but it is that date of registration. I think very difficult for business owners, because at the end of the day, you want to protect the brand that you've created. You want the company incorporated, so you've got to get ready and get started. So a difficult one. So I think for me, it's then a question of saying, right, well, is there another way of looking at this to say how else can the business be financed? Just because one door's closed doesn't mean that the business is not fundable.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very good answer, because their next question was they were looking for a grant to support the launch of their new invention, which is a totally different question. Any advice on that at all?
So again,
oh, sorry, go on.
So I was going to say, again, highly possible. There's lots of detail that needs to come through to see which is what is available by way of support that could be available. Grants slightly more difficult from that point of view, depending on what we're looking to do and what the nature of the business is. So if we look at this particularly in relation to those Innovate grants, the Innovate funding is much more in line with a business that has an idea, that is looking to build on the idea before it launches. So there's an element of time that needs to be passed before the business is ready to go. So if it fits within the Innovate profile, and again, equally, it's important just to keep a very close idea on what funding is available, because the grant programs by their nature are either a value or time restricted. So it could be available for a couple of weeks, couple of months, but it will be on a revolving basis. So there may be one that fits your business profile at a point in time that you just need to be ready to apply for.
So it's the question, they established in 2015. They've evidently developed a product in the meantime, or a process, or an application, and they haven't actually gone to the market to achieve sales. A way of looking at that could be what they've developed is an asset that could be kept in a limited company, and now they're starting to trade through a different limited company, and that could be seen as a startup, because the startup trade is now starting based upon what they've developed in the background. That may be an option.
Are you able to offer business support if someone does not need a loan?
Yes,
Definitely.
we are. Certainly across Essex, we're funded to provide that support across Essex.
Can I give an example at the moment of an active case I've got? Is a customer or a business that I've been introduced to is looking to tender for a new contract. They are a business, small business, and this tender document is 40 pages long. So I've gone out to them and gone through the tender document and helped them understand what is required. And now, through my intervention, we're putting that tender document together. So we can help. It's not just finance.
Do you recommend any particular template for the creation of a business plan? There are various templates available, and .gov seems to recommend the Prince's Trust Plan, for example.
I think the answer, the straight answer is no, and the reason for that is that there are 1,001 templates that exist. They are all and should be variations on the same thing. So the most important thing is that all of the key elements of the plan is included. And if we start with that Campari mnemonic, if we go through that and we answer each of those within your business plan, whether it's a 1 page of A4 or whether it's a 40-page glossy document, as long as the information is in there, then that's the key. I think the important thing is the steer as to what should be included. I have seen the Prince's Trust template, and it is a good starting document. There's no doubt about it. One of the things to always be aware of is when you're producing your business plan is not to go into jargon, not to go into too much specific detail, but more to ensure that if a layman were reading it, that you've answered all of the questions, hopefully, and more than they are likely to ask. But no, I mean, unfortunately, there are so many business plan templates. There isn't one that you would say, and there are so many different types of business. There isn't one that you would say that is the gold standard blueprint for it.
If your business has not yet begun trading, can the cash flow section be omitted from the business plan?
I would always suggest that when you're doing your business plan, you would need to have a focus on your likely cash flow forecast. The key really, whether at least to the point of actually preparing for what your business is going to do, because we've got to have an understanding of what the likely costs of selling the product are going to be. You've got to have an idea of what your likely income from selling will be. Otherwise, you're missing a key part of how you're building your business up, because ultimately you're building the business up to make money. So we've got to work on our pricing. We've got to work on our cash flow. If not, you've got one of the best ideas there is with no financial focus to it. So you've got to have the two as part of that. It's difficult, and there is a lot of blue sky thinking and all those other great anecdotes that you've got to put into play. But ultimately, you've got to plan for where you want to go financially, as well as from a business operation point of view.
just coming back to that is the financial plan also gives you an idea of what you plan to achieve. So if you've got that financial plan in front of you, it can be reviewed. How did we do? Are we above target, below target? Are we above cost, below cost? So that's why both run alongside each other. The other thing I would say about a business plan is if you are looking for finance, you're looking for investment, don't just concentrate on the finance part of it. I've seen a number of people that put a lot of effort into the finance part of it, when if you've got a good idea, you've got the ability, you've got the team, that needs to come out in the business plan as well. So it's like a balanced presentation.
Yes, it's not always about the money, is it?
No, no.
And this is it. You know, when you're preparing a business plan, the financials are not a separate section. If you're doing your marketing strategy, who your customers are, how much they're likely to pay, how many they're going to buy, that in effect is starting to tell you what your income is likely to be. And, you know, the costs of production and producing and making and developing and designing and research and everything are the costs associated with getting it to a state where you can sell it. So in effect, the financials do actually fall out at the end. So you don't start with the financials,
No.
You end with the financials. So I think the answer to the question is, yes, it's not a complete business plan without the financials, but it's the start of a business plan without the financials.
Sure.
And if
Also,
you need help with the financials at the end, then you come and ask for help. Which leads me on to the next point, where can I contact you for support? I already have completed my business plan, and I have actually done my cash flow. So I think the answer is yes. So how do they contact you? Would you like to give a plug for how they can contact you?
Most definitely. So I have included on the slides, and we'll get the slides circulated around. Actually, there is our contact details. David's and my contact details are on the slides, along with a link into our central mailbox. And so we are backing Essex Business, part of the Let's Do Business group, and we can be contacted by an online search through for backing Essex Business, or as I say, we'll have the details on the slides and make sure that they're circulated around to everybody. You
mentioned EU grants. Now, we're no longer part of the EU, but grants are still available. Can you signpost us to a good website to search for these?
So the start point, I would suggest, would always be the www.gov.uk website. So I'm avoiding the word legacy, but I think we're probably looking at sort of legacy grant schemes still running through. But we are out of the EU, but we've still got a financial relationship, financial tie. So I think the government website is a very good start point for financial support for businesses, and particularly if we're looking at businesses with an innovation element to it. That Innovate UK grants are key, but alongside that, also support through the likes of the DIT, Department of International Trade, is also accessible via that source. The perhaps secondary or subsidiary grants that are provided, and I mentioned the South East Business Boost and the low case grants, they're accessible from direct inquiries to those websites. The alternative, though, if you've got an inquiry on that, is by all means contact us directly on that, and we can give you an answer as to whether or not there's anything specific into your sector. But with grants, it's important to look at the sector that you're in and in the wider context. So if there's an arts or a creative element to it, there's quite a lot of funding still available through the Lottery Foundation. So if it's sports related, again, the Lottery Foundation will provide funding. So the UK Lottery. So there are a number of grants that are available from perhaps non-standard bodies that are relevant to particular sectors. And it's important, I think, just to look at the wider market rather than focus on just one particular area. But government, www was my start point, but also by all means contact us and things like Lottery Foundation. And industry bodies is another useful point of reference for particular sectors where they will be aware of funders that are willing to support local businesses.
I think it's very true that there is still a lot of grant money available out there, and finding it is sometimes difficult,
Yes.
which is why you need to ask for help. And anybody who is running or thinking of running a business should actually ask for help as and when they need it. Don't wait until it's too late. Do
No.
your investigations early. Plan ahead of as much as you can, and always listen to the advice. It might not be appropriate at that time, or it might not be what you want to hear at that time, but always listen to the advice and then make up your own mind and take your own decisions. After all, it's your business. We can only offer advice on best practice, but it's down to you as to how you run your business. And bearing in mind, a lot of the businesses we work with are so highly innovative, they sometimes are outside the norm in many respects, and therefore we have to think outside the box. And that's why we have the likes of David and Graham, Josh and myself here, and the team that backs us up to help you get round all these obstacles which appear in your path as you're going forward. We are all veterans of doing this work, and there's no stone unturned.
John, just coming back on to what you were mentioning earlier, do come to us for advice. And just to remind people and let them know, the advice from ourselves is 12 hours free advice. So whilst you may be looking at advice from other professionals and they may charge, we can give you, because we're funded by Essex County Council, to Essex businesses, 12 hours of free advice, which I think is very useful, hopefully useful to businesses.
There is a qualification. We were correct about holders. So are we, I'm just going to be in general terms here, and please forgive me, Nina, if I get this question wrong, but help and support for holders is more of a social enterprise, and therefore I'm going to rephrase the question. Holders with mental health, which I can work with a clinical psychologist. So this is more of the social enterprise angle. So is there any help and support and funding social enterprise that is available through your programs?
Possibly depend on the constitution of that business. So there are a number of, one in particular, the Essex Community Foundation will provide small grant support to help other charities and CIC type businesses, so community interest businesses. So if it depends on the incorporation and the constitution of that business, so it may be. And Essex Community Foundation will provide, I say, relatively small amounts of funding, but it is a benevolent grant provider, so it is possible. And equally within that depends on what the spend is for. So I mentioned the South East Business Boost. They will provide finance to help with grant finance towards capital expenditure items. So if we are looking at a business that's looking to buy equipment, then they will provide up to 30% of the funding. The important thing to remember with the grants is that there are two things to remember with the grants. One is it won't provide the entire solution. It will only provide part of it, because it's usually on a match funded basis. So there will be a need to provide the balance of the funds. And the other most important thing is that you need to get the grant approved before you commit to the expenditure, because you can't do it retrospectively, because you'll be deemed to have had the money to be able to commit to the expenditure. So you must get the grant approved before you commit to the expenditure. But possibly, depending on what they're looking to spend the money on.
We can always help with that, Nina. So just email uez@essex.ac.uk and we can make an appointment to speak further with you and explore further with you with Graham as well.
Sure, no problem.
So I've got one final question and then we must wrap up, ladies and gentlemen. The question is about the criteria of how you determine whether or not a business is innovative or how innovative that is. And I'm actually going to answer this question on behalf of Graham and David, because we look at innovation every single day of the week. And the criteria that we use is how innovative is this? Is this new to the business? In other words, the technology exists elsewhere, but this business is now adapting it to another use? Or is this new technology absolutely brand new and has never been used before in any other area? In other words, you've invented it yourself and you own the IP. So they're the two main areas of innovation that we look at. It's either absolutely brand new, never existed before, or it's been adapted from an existing technology, but used in a brand new way. Would you like to add anything to that, Graham or David?
I think that's spot on, actually. I think there isn't really a straight answer to it, and I think that's as good an answer as you can look at. Really, it's a question of going forward with what your business is, and in a way fitting that into the views that are taken from potential funding and investor partners. But I think that's absolutely right. Actually, in its simplest form, anyone that's coming up with an idea that's developing is innovating. But it's then a question of what you do with that, as to whether or not it lends itself to a funder or an investor, or particularly one of the Innovate grant schemes coming through.
Thank you to the audience for your participation in our polls and for all the questions that we've had today. Thank you very much indeed. It shows that you had a lot of interest in what was going on. And my thanks to David Walford and Graham Johnson from the Let's Do Business group, part of backing Essex Business. Thank you very much indeed. And as you can see from the messages coming through, there's a lot of thank yous. So, well,
thank you very much for having us on. And I'll send you an updated set of these slides, and if we can circulate to anyone or circulate to the attendees, that would be great.
Thank you very much indeed. All the best.
Thank you.
Look forward to our next webinar next week. Thank you.